Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Leptak. I'm the 7th grade teacher here at Sequoia Village School, and I'm excited to be taking part in reading readiness and why it's so important to encourage students to read on their own. That's something that I take very seriously in my class. I have books all over the place. I want them to find books they're interested in, because that's how you get them reading. And it's well known that if you get students reading on their own, they're going to be way ahead because they're going to, instead of us, going and teaching them with worksheets how to punctuate properly and how to use proper grammar, the right syntax, and everything. Their brains are going to absorb it the more they read, and they'll be that much further ahead if they're reading on their own. And we know the only way to get them reading on their own is to help find things that they're interested in, things they like, things that they can't help but read. So it's really about finding what your student, what their interests are, what they're curious about, what kind of stories that they're into. Some kids like fantasy, some kids like science fiction, some kids like uh, realistic novels or military stories. So it's really just about finding uh, what kind of things they want to read on their own and just, fostering that. So I try to do that with my classroom, just the way it's set up. You might also have the question, why do we have to teach so much English? Why do we have to get them reading so much? And really, reading and writing and learning in English language arts is all about communicating. We want to make students good communicators. We want to help them be better communicators. Because no matter what you grew up to be, communicating is always going to be at the very top of the skills you need to have. So we want to get them reading. We want to get them reading, writing, and understanding how the English language works, but also uh, learning the elements of story, the elements of literature. That's a big part of the standards of 7th grade and beyond. So I just wanted to introduce a couple of really great templates for understanding the structure of a story. And as you see it, as you recognize it, you're going to see it in all the books you read and the movies you watch, anywhere stories are told. You're going to see this pattern. It begins with exposition. Okay, exposition is the character and the setting. All right. In any story, you have to know who the character is and why, what matters to them, what makes them unique, and that's just called characterization. So any story you're watching, whether it's a movie or reading a book, see how the author or the director, storyteller does that. That's just to get you invested in the character and seeing the story through the character's eyes. The setting also plays a huge role in the story. So these two elements, right next to each other, are the exposition, the first thing you see. Now, where are they? When are they? Is this a period piece from another time? These things are all going to be a huge part of the story going forward. So, once you get the exposition out of the way, then the plot needs to kick in. There needs to be a problem or a struggle or some kind of conflict. That's called rising action. That means the story's going somewhere. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie that just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere or read a book that doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. That's because number two maybe takes too long to kick in, or maybe it doesn't kick in at all. Uh, but when you're telling a story that's trying to move the pace along, you definitely want some rising action. That gets you to the top of the mountain where the climax is. Okay, that's where the way this is worded, the problem reaches a high point, so there's great suspense and lots of action. Okay, so this is usually the part of the movie, probably a good hour and a half in, where there's the final showdown or the final battle or the final whatever, and there's something that takes place here. There's something that's learned by the main character. There's some kind of knowledge that they gain that helps them deal with this conflict and bring it to a head, basically. Now, after that, we come down the mountain. And it takes a lot longer, just like in real life, it takes a lot longer to go up a mountain than it does to go down a mountain. And if you're ever hiking, that's pretty, I mean, I've found that to be true myself. I don't hike a lot of mountains, but I've hiked a few. So the falling action usually happens right after the climax. That's where we see what happens to the characters afterwards. The problems being sorted out. It's less action, but that's okay because there's plenty of action up there. Now we're coming down the mountain, and we want to see the resolution, the problem finally being solved, and the end of the story where we find out what happens to the characters and we find out we hopefully everything's wrapped up nicely, unless it's a TV show and there's something happening next week, or there's more movies coming out, more books, another book series. I don't know, but usually on a standalone story, these are the elements that you're looking for. So this is something you can do with your kids at home if you're watching a movie. uh, you know you can pretty much go through all these steps and find what's going on in all of them. We do that in class. Whether it's a short movie or uh, some kind of story that we're looking at, we'll go through these together. And I've got some great Story Mountain worksheets that they can fill out as they go, and that'll just get them familiar with the art of storytelling if they ever want to write one themselves, or if they just want to know, be better at recognizing the elements of story. Now, let me see if I can move to the next slide. Okay, now this one is a little bit more advanced. I did it again. That's just a sneak preview of what Mr. Merrill has for you. Let me go ahead and see if I can move this up a little bit. Okay, this is called the Hero's Journey, and this is a little bit more advanced version of what we just showed you. It's a more of a uh, character arc. This is what the character goes through, the main character, usually the hero, during the course of a story. And basically, we see right here, he or she is in the ordinary world, and that's the exposition. That's the character and the setting. That's how things start. That's everything's normal. They call it stasis, the normal world. And somewhere there's a call to adventure. And think about it. In most stories, there is some sort of a call to adventure. There is some sort of thing that doesn't happen the way it's supposed to, or something out of the character's control that's happening that the character needs to insert him or herself into in some way, and that's what they call the call to adventure. Now, of course, most characters refuse the call right away. Let me tell you, first of all, George Lucas, who created Star Wars, followed this in the first movie to a T. He studied this, and Luke Skywalker follows this completely. Okay, there's the refusal of the call. He meets the mentor, who turns out to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. Bilbo meets Gandalf. There's all kinds of stories that have all of these, this journey that a hero goes through. There's the refusal of the call. At first, it seems too big, it seems too much. This hero does not think he or she can stand up to whatever it is that he or she is being called to do. There's meeting a mentor, somebody who's older, wiser, who's gone through something like this themselves, who can offer some sort of advice or help or comfort or anything. Um, and then there's the crossing of the threshold, going from the ordinary world to the special world, to the world of adventure where anything can happen. There's tests, allies, and enemies. Then this might sound weird at first, okay? But then there's something called the approach to the Inmost cave. This is where things get dark. It could be an actual dark place that the person goes to, or it could be a figurative thing. All right, but there is something. This is where the conflict, whether it's inner conflict or outer conflict, is becoming more and more uh, something that the hero is having to deal with, and maybe not, you know, winning at first with. Then there's the ordeal in the abyss. I'm sorry, the slide thing keeps popping up. The ordeal in the abyss, facing the shadow self. Any hero has to face something in themselves that's holding them back from the adventure that they're called to be on. And this usually hits pretty midway or maybe later in the adventure where the hero has to face something about themselves. And um, as you go into the Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker, I hope I'm not spoiling anything, but Luke Skywalker has to deal with some dad issues and who his father is and what that might mean for him. That's he actually goes into a cave to see that. George Lucas follows this to a T. The apotheosis. This is where there's some divine help. Okay, there's something from beyond that comes to help this hero in the moment of need. All right. Uh, in Star Wars, it's the Force. Uh, it could be a character that's just beyond. Uh, this isn't always there, but when it is, I mean, it's following this to a T. There's the ultimate boon, something that the hero gains or learns or wins throughout the course of the adventure, usually at the climax. Just watched WandaVision last night, and I saw this happen in the last episode. Maybe you did too. Maybe you will later. But there was something that the main character got that helped overcome the conflict and facing the shadow self. Then there's a refusal of the call, but then there's a refusal of the return to the normal, ordinary world. And that's kind of interesting sometimes. Sometimes that happens. Not always. This isn't exact, but it's kind of fun when you can, take this and see it throughout the course of a movie or book, uh, all that. There's the Master of Two Worlds. This is where two worlds come together in this hero's journey, the ordinary world and the special world. They return with special knowledge and they ascend to a higher plane. They come back to the ordinary world, but they're different. They're changed. Going through the adventure has made them different in some way, and they're able to help their community in a higher way. That's what the ascent to a higher plane is. So this may be too much. I don't know. I just thought I would include it. Some students are just fine with Story Mountain. Other students really want to dig into this stuff and see how a lot of stories are made. But I assure you, both of these are templates that once you see them, you're going to keep seeing them, no matter what you watch or read. And the students enjoy it when they get to kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit, and while they're reading, they can see these elements in the story going on, and they can kind of feel like they're on the inside of what the author's trying to do. It's kind of fun for them to know what the author is doing and appreciate what the author is doing on a different level, and see how it can be done well, and sometimes how it can be done not so well. Uh, but it definitely elevates the reading experience. So I definitely think this is something that would be fun for parents to get into with their kids. Maybe if you're not reading books together, but you're watching TV shows or you're watching a movie, it's still storytelling. So this is still going to be there, and there's writing behind it. So that this could be something you could talk to your student about as you watch something. Anyway, Story Mountain, the hero's journey, just a couple of tools that might help uh, readers and storytellers and those appreciating stories. So I hope you got something out of this. I want to thank Beth Edwards for putting together this reading readiness presentation and getting us all involved. So I hope you got something out of it, and I'll just leave it at that.